Welcome to @Cronkite News, your social sharing connection where you choose the news. Facebook likes and shares, tweets, retweets, and favorites. YouTube views and subscriptions. We're watching you watch us. From our digital home at cronkitenews.azpbs.org to your television, web browser, or mobile device. Let's get a refresh on the top Arizona news of the week.
The Tucson Police Department recently received a large federal grant to help law enforcement understand the signs of sex trafficking and get victims and potential victims off the street. Cronkite News' Jesse Schultz explains just how bad the problem is and how one local group is fighting it.
The McCain Institute and ASU's recent study of more than 200 homeless youth found that as many as 1 in 3 have experienced some kind of sexual exploitation or been victims of commercial sex trafficking. Every year, children and teens across Arizona are the victims of sex trafficking.
If you pay a kid for a sex act with food, lodging, a bed to sleep in, a ride from A to B, you're trafficking a child.
According to the National Human Trafficking Resource Center, in 2015, there were 4,136 cases of sex trafficking in the nation, 116 of those coming from Arizona.
At 14, I ran away from home.
After that, Lisa Hansen met an older man who used her for drug and sex trafficking.
Sexual abuse destroys a soul. And it makes you feel filthy and worthless. And it also makes you feel like that's all you're good for.
Cindy McCain, co-chair of the Governor's Council on Human Trafficking, says the number of victims across the state are alarming.
What we are finding is the numbers are much larger than we ever thought they were. It's much more widespread than we ever thought it was. It's everywhere.
In Tucson, police, victims, and advocates are pushing back. And Hansen's dad, Jerry Payton, is at the forefront of the fight.
Well, in our case, I was a pastor. My daughter was president of her class. She was, in a church girl. She didn't smoke, drink, or anything like that. And she wound up being trafficked.
Payton started the Sold No More organization in Tucson. The group says 1 in 5 children will be sexually solicited online. The Tucson Police Department received a $740,000 federal grant to assemble a human trafficking task force.
Our goal, obviously, is always to make a dent and trying to diminish both sex and labor trafficking.
Hansen, now 44, teaches 8th graders about awareness. With the projector on and the lights off, she explains just what happened to her at their age.
Make people feel like they're not even worth it.
Tucson police are mainly focusing on getting girls off the streets, and if they are over 18, arresting them.
And sometimes when you talk to them, they don't realize that they're being trafficked. They just think that it's something they need to do. It's a necessity in order to survive.
Hansen says most of the time, it's not their choice.
There's a level of choice that goes along with it, but if you dig deeper and you go way back to what's really been the catalyst in all of it, everybody goes, oh.
At least, Payton says, they are finally recognizing the problem.
Before a community, before a state or a country can really respond to a problem, they have to be convinced it's there, and it's real.
Hansen, for now, is concentrating on the kids at schools. As Sold No More continues their education program to middle schools and high schools, more victims are coming forward with their stories. Live in downtown Phoenix, Jesse Schultz, Cronkite News.
Marijuana dispensaries across the U.S. are giving Facebook a thumbs down. The social media site has shut down the majority of all dispensary Facebook pages. Cronkite News reporter Lauren Michaels met with a local dispensary who argues that shutting down their page creates a bigger issue.
Marijuana says that dispensaries' locations violate their policy when it comes to selling drugs. But the dispensary I met with says they're confused about the sudden shutdown.
I got a message saying your page had been unpublished and that it had violated the terms of Facebook.
The Giving Tree Wellness Center is a medical marijuana dispensary, one of many nationwide with newly banned Facebook pages.
As far as we know, our 3 years of All of our different events that we've done, all the fundraisers, all the memories that the Giving Tree has accumulated and shared with our community are all deleted.
Morris says they would post photos of community events they participated in with their patients, like these on their Facebook page, rather than primarily using their page to draw in sales.
Last year, we raised the most money of any organization in the state of Arizona to go towards the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation, which is a qualifying condition for medical marijuana cards.
But despite community events, Jessica Smith, a volunteer for Keep AZ Drug Free, thinks the Facebook dispensary page ban is a great idea.
Right now, currently as it stands, it's intended to be for medicine. So not sure why people would be on Facebook searching to find a place to get their medicine.
As of right now, 4 states in the U.S. allow recreational marijuana, while other selected states regulate only medical use. On a federal level, marijuana is still illegal. In a statement from Facebook, they said, in order to maintain a safe environment on Facebook, we have community standards that describe what is and is not allowed on the service. Anyone can report content to us if they think it violates our standards. Our teams review these reports rapidly and will remove the content if there is a violation. Facebook says although they allow marijuana advocacy, they do not allow content that promotes the sale of marijuana, including marijuana dispensaries.
We're not out there promoting how high can you get on Saturday night. We're out there promoting wellness.
More than 220,000 faithful are expected to attend Pope Francis's open-air mass in the border city Ciudad Juarez on Wednesday. Cronkite News reporter Mauricio Casillas met up with a Phoenix family that made the trek to be a part of the historic moment.
Construction workers put the finishing touches on the altar Pope Francis will use for his final mass in Mexico. This Phoenix couple has tickets, and they've driven 7 hours to be in Juarez.
I'm just very excited to be able to get near, and feel the blessings.
It's a homecoming for Sergio, who was born and raised here. He believes the Pope will help the city overcome its turbulent past.
We are in the middle of the desert, and it's a thirsty city. It's thirsty of justice and hope and mercy, and this is the message the Pope is going to bring to us.
Sergio, like many in Juarez, has experienced the impact of drug violence firsthand. His next-door neighbor was killed by a gang member, and his younger brother died from drug abuse.
It was really hard for my family. We went for a couple rehabs. He tried to do that, and he cannot make it, and he ended up, losing his life.
The one thing Sergio wants to hear from the Pope?
A message of peace and reconciliation, a mercy.
This altar behind me is the closest that Pope Francis will be to the American border, about 50 yards away from El Paso, Texas. Now, he's expected to talk about the migrant issues, and he's also going to be praying for El Paso, the United States, and the thousands of immigrants that have died trying to come across the border.
We need to be heard. As immigrants, for myself, I'm an immigrant, my parents were immigrants, and we should all be able to have a better life.
During his visit in Mexico, Pope Francis has emphasized that he wants to be an instrument of peace.
The Pope is coming to bring us hope, and it's light at the end of the tunnel.
People are expected to line up at 6 in the morning at this site the day of the Mass, even though the Pope won't show up until late afternoon. In Ciudad Juarez, Mexico, I'm Mauricio Casillas, Cronkite News.
Something else will be in the sky in the coming months, the A-10 Warthog, a fighter jet based at the Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Tucson. The Air Force planned to retire the jet, but the Pentagon budget released this week includes funds for continued operation of the A-10. Cronkite News reporter Katie Beery in our Washington bureau talked with Arizona leaders about the change.
That change has been a long time coming. For the past 2 years, fans of the A-10 have been fighting to keep it in the skies, and this week they celebrated a partial victory in that war.
It's a 29,000-pound weapon of destruction.
Jedi, good hit.
And it's done the dirty work of the Air Force for more than 40 years. This plane might have an unflattering name, but Representative Martha McSally still loves the Warthog.
If you are on the ground under fire, in harm's way, often in very complex circumstances, the A-10 provides a capability to keep you alive that no other airplane does.
And the plane will be around for at least another 5 years. After threatening to retire the A-10s, the Pentagon's 2017 budget proposal included funding for the fighter jets until 2022.
The bottom line here is we are not proposing to retire any of these aircraft.
Davis-Monthan Air Force Base has more than 80 A-10s, and that's another reason why Arizona lawmakers, like John McCain, fought to keep the Warthog.
Well, I feel good, not just for Arizona, where obviously it's a very important part of our economy, but far more importantly than that, it is the most important tool in our fight against ISIS and our capabilities of destroying them.
Sure, it's kicking butt in the ISIS fight, which we knew it would.
But McSally has a personal connection. She was the first female A-10 instructor pilot in history.
So this is actually a cutout of a part of an actual 30mm A-10 gun.
She flew the 50-foot-long plane for 2.5 decades at Tucson's Air Force Base.
The airplane doesn't care whether you're a boy or a girl. Airplane just cares if you fly it well and you shoot straight.
Fans of the Warthog are already looking to 2022 to see whether its proposed replacement, the F-35, will be ready in time, but that's a fight for another day. In Washington, Katie Beery, Cronkite News.
It's not every day that a hearing room at the state capitol is filled with dogs and their owners. But today, owners brought their service animals to the Senate to comment on SB 1166, which would change the state requirements for those animals. Reporter Julia Thatcher was at the open comment today.
These dogs are always hard at work.
I wouldn't be here because you saved me 4 times in the last 2 years that I've had them.
They're service animals for people with disabilities. These animals can be trained to assist people with autism, hearing impairment, and even detecting seizures.
Dining out, going to theaters, and doing some of the things you and I do, we take for granted. They have to have this animal with them because it's a life-saving need, and they have a disability.
So I can have a life again. I don't have to sit in my house. I don't have to be in an assisted living home. I can go fishing. I can go up in the mountains again. It's pretty incredible.
This bill would make it a Class 2 misdemeanor for anyone who violates the rights of individuals using a service animal. A service animal trainer said he supports what's trying to be accomplished, but doesn't support the current bill.
A lot of the aspects in it are undefined and could present a problem to users out in public, and denial of access and criminal charges because of that.
People can register service animals online. The problem is people registering their pets that aren't actually used as a service animal. And those at the hearing say that makes it harder for them to bring service animals into businesses.
They're here to serve a purpose and to work and to save lives.
After hearing from the public, Senator McGuire says amendments will be made. In Phoenix, Julia Thatcher, Cronkite News.
Animal rights advocates went to Capitol Hill today to fight for what they think is a better and safer way to train military medics. Cronkite News reporter Lauren Clark joins us now in Washington.
Well, it's a fact not known by too many people. The Department of Defense using and wounding live animals in order to help teach and train its military medics. But all of this may change thanks to a guy named Caesar.
Caesar lies on the table, motionless as medics begin to address his wound. While he may look realistic, Caesar isn't a human at all. He's a simulator that can breathe, bleed, and even scream. Caesar and his companion, the cut suit, are a much better alternative, advocates say, than what's happening now.
Of animals in military training in which they're stabbed, shot, blown up, burned, and killed.
The Best Practices Act bill, sponsored by Arizona Representative Raul Grijalva and others, would fund practices
that better trained troops that are more relevant to human beings, are cheaper, and obviously save animals' lives.
Right now, the Department of Defense wounds live animals in order to teach medics how to operate in trauma situations. But the anatomical differences with a goat or pig could be problematic.
So medical providers who have been trained to stop severe bleeding in live goats unfortunately discover the gross limitations of this training when they're trying to actually translate it in real time to human anatomy for the first time on the battlefield.
But with Caesar, trainees can cut his thick skin, clench his rubbery veins, or stare into his LED eyes. His wiring is specific to a human and reflects a more lifelike experience for a medic. Caesar can even be reused several times, unlike live animals.
There's a more humane way to do training that's going to save taxpayers money, and it's even going to be more effective than harming animals. It should be used.
Companies like CAE Healthcare say they're continuing to improve this technology with simulations that save lives both in and out of the battlefield.
We're here to protect life, not to destroy it.
Now, we have reached out to the Pentagon for a comment, but as of tonight, they have not responded. Reporting live in Washington, Lauren Clark, Cronkite News.
If you still think Iron Man only saves the world in comic books and that the Terminator is no more than a Hollywood creation, chances are you haven't heard of the wearable robotics industry. Our reporter Z Zung shows us some of the creation being shown at WearCon here in Cronkite.
I believe that we're on a threshold of really man's next transformation, and that is where man and machine become symbiotic.
You've only seen it in movies.
What did you do to me?
But the combination of man and machine has already been used in many fields, from military to medicine. Dr. Armstrong is a professor of surgery at the University of Arizona, and he spoke at the event. He sees a promising future for the technology.
Some of the great, really the revolutionary potential of various types of new types of technologies that can not only heal wounds, but then protect people and help people move through the world. And that really is the promise of wearable robotics and exoskeletons.
Take this group of ASU students, who's developing a jetpack to enhance soldiers' running capabilities in combat.
It's very simple. All it does is push you forward using air, like 15 miles an hour for an entire 4 minutes, so it's pretty fast.
After putting on this 15 pounds of jetpack, it gives me an extra 30 pounds of boost. With the turn of a knob and a little bit of practice, it allows me to run much faster than I normally do. However, Dr. Ling says there's still many challenges ahead for this emerging industry.
We have to do it in a way that allows us to ask these very difficult ethical questions, socially relevant questions, so that we can be prepared for when these things do come about, because they will certainly come about.
And we're seeing the future and what's ahead in wearable robotics. In Phoenix, Zizeng, Cronkite News.
During this legislative session, the House is scheduled to hear proposed bill HB 2640. The bill asks Arizona to grant millions of dollars this fiscal year to the Department of Health Services to aid in the research, treatment, and diagnosis of the autoimmune disorders PANS and Panda. Amber Kawaji spoke to members of the PANS Panda Awareness Group about the importance of the bill.
Dr. Susan Sweeto introduced the PANS Panda syndrome to the world in 2012. Over the last few days, Dr. Sweeto was here in Arizona addressing the House Health Committee on PANS Panda's awareness. She says as many as 1% of grade school age children have the classic form of pandas, and having a center to diagnose and treat children is necessary.
On the night of September 16th, 2008, our lives changed forever.
Carrie Kling's son, Alex, was diagnosed with Panda syndrome, an autoimmune disorder often misdiagnosed as Tourette's syndrome.
Children with what was just being called Tourette's or regular OCD or even ADHD, many of the common childhood psychiatric disorders are actually missed cases of pandas.
In fact, it took Carrie and her family 9 years traveling to 5 states, seeing 25 doctors to properly diagnose Alex and get him on the right treatment.
And we believe that children need to have a very comprehensive medical workup because pandas post-strep, OCD and behavioral problems is the majority of the cases of PANS. About 80% you will be able to find a strep trigger.
That's why the PANS Panda Awareness Group is asking state legislature to help fund the Center of Excellence at the University of Arizona Medical Center in Tucson.
The center is basically designed to take the most severe kids, help them, treat them, give them a projected plan of recovery, and then put them back in their own local environment, their homes, and let them recover.
I was determined that nobody should have to go through this, and that's why we have support groups now. We're creating this center. so that people don't have to go this alone.
If the center receives funding, it will be the first of its kind. The center will consist of roughly 7 specialists, nurses, and social workers to provide diagnosis and treatment specifically designed around the child. Support will also be provided for family. In the broadcast center, Amber Kawaji, Cronkite News.
February has been synonymous with Black history for decades, but over the weekend, hundreds gathered to celebrate the successes and learn about the issues facing a more specific community. Cronkite News reporter Audrey Wheel attended the 5th annual African American Conference on Disabilities, which kicked off a weekend of events celebrating Black History, Deaf Black History Month. The conference covered a wide range of topics. The biggest issue at hand, justice in the Black deaf community, when some say that cultural barriers combined with communication barriers can make a fair legal process nearly impossible.
The large issue that I've seen mostly in the criminal legal system is a lack of understanding cultural competence about deaf culture, deaf communication, or even Black culture, Black deaf culture.
Talila Lewis founded the country's first and only national database for deaf prisoners, and she spent the past decade investigating possible wrongful conviction cases.
A lot of these cases I don't have physical evidence showing, but I can show you that they couldn't communicate with their defense counsel, they couldn't communicate with the judge, they couldn't communicate with law enforcement, and to me that should be more than sufficient to reopen a case.
In her keynote speech, she mentioned several wrongfully convicted individuals who have been exonerated. And while that's the goal, she says fighting for even the little things is a struggle.
Deaf prisoners are completely isolated. I've been working for 4 years lobbying the Federal Communications Commission, the Department of Justice, just to get video phones in our prisons. Video phones are free.
But those who attended the conference said the crux of the issue transcends race and ability, that it's a basic human right.
Bottom line is access to communication. We don't have the ability to equally participate in a variety of aspects of life.
If we're unable to communicate what our needs are, what our concerns are, what our desires are, then our lives are not as full as they should be. And certainly if you're in prison, and particularly wrongfully, then that impact is even greater.
The Department of Corrections says only 12 Arizona prisoners are deaf, and they're able to request certain accommodations, like a sign language interpreter. In the Media Center, Audrey Wheel, Cronkite News.
A nationally popular food truck stopped by in the Valley this weekend. Cronkite News reporter Alexis Dominguez found out why residents flocked to this Hello Kitty themed truck.
We got engaged at the Japanese National American Museum in LA during the Super Cute World of Hello Kitty Museum exhibit.
Hello Kitty fanatics were out in Scottsdale this weekend waiting to get their chance to experience the Hello Kitty Cafe truck.
I'm a diehard Hello Kitty fan. I have been since I was 3.
Stacey Mae Simpson came all the way from Mesa and arrived at Scottsdale Quarter at 7 a.m. just to be one of the first in line for the Hello Kitty Cafe truck. When asked what she loved most about Hello Kitty, she said she loved everything.
I went to Hello Kitty Con. I went to the Super Cute Friendship Festival. They always bring something new to the table.
The driver of this truck, Alan T., says the fans love the truck and always come out when they hear the truck is coming to a city near them.
We like to relate the Hello Kitty truck to a unicorn. You know, you don't always see it, and it only comes to every city once.
Hello Kitty fans Stephanie and Susan say they have been waiting for this day for 6 months.
We're here today because we went to Hello Kitty Con last year in LA. We loved it. Kitty. We loved it. We loved it. We had the best time. We were there for the whole day. We bought $1 million worth of merchandise, and that's why we're here today, because we want to buy more.
The food truck has a variety of sweet treats that feature Hello Kitty's face and a signature bow.
Today we have Petit Four mini cakes. They're an almonds-based mini cake that go great with tea or coffee. We have our French macaroons, our cookie set. We also have our bowl water bottles, t-shirts, and mugs.
When asked what Hello Kitty themed pastry she wanted, Lauren said she was not going to hold back.
I'm probably getting, well, one of everything on the truck and hopefully something to add to my collection.
There are Hello Kitty stores and shops across the world, but there is only one Hello Kitty food truck. In Scottsdale, Alexis Dominguez, Cronkite News.
Now, here's an @Cronkite News pick of the week, a favorite from the Cronkite News staff.
We've been seeing all kinds of wildlife out here at Lake Pleasant, and that's because of warmer weather.
We haven't seen any wild burros yet, but they are here. At Lake Pleasant, there's actually about 3 times the recommended amount of 200 burros. Lake Pleasant is just one of 12 areas across the state that's seeing more burros than they should have.
Yeah, then it's competition of who gets petted.
They're cute and they're lovable, and they're also overrunning the state. Arizona's point person for the burro overpopulation issue, who has worked for Arizona Game and Fish for 20 years, said he's never seen the numbers so high in so many areas.
This is the first time that I'm aware that every herd management area in the state was over AML, and in many areas grossly over AML.
Here are 6 of the herd management areas in the state, with the red bars showing how far they are over AML, the appropriate management level. Statewide, it's been set at 1,316 burros, but the latest estimates have the burro population at over 4,000 and growing. In addition to causing car accidents on the highways and damaging trees and plants aesthetically, the non-native burros, when there are too many of them, make life more difficult for native species like deer and bighorn sheep.
Burros will actually keep wildlife, physically exclude wildlife from waters.
They will eat grass down to the point that it doesn't regrow, and they will strip trees of their bark and new growth.
One of the best solutions to the problem is actually adoption. And here at the state prison in Florence, it's inmates that get these burros ready to be adopted. Randy Helm, who runs the prison's wild horse inmate program, which includes burros, says his facility could hold about twice the amount of horses and burros that it has right now.
Our ability to have burros here is totally dependent on the Bureau of Land Management. We have room here. Some of that just depends on when they will do a gather.
Officials say gathering and adopting out the animals is the most reasonable solution because it only takes a few months to get a wild burro ready for adoption.
Cronkite News tracks your likes, tweets, and shares from all our social sites to bring you this news special. At Cronkite News, our weekly refresh. Join the conversation.